Hey everyone, Gale Network here, and we are less than a minute away to see what PlayStation has in store today. It is September 10th, 2024. Mark Cerny is going to hop on very soon and presumably talk to us about the PlayStation 5 Pro. Maybe show off just how powerful it is, what's it going to cost, the release date, any additional accessories, maybe some visual differences in games or performance improvements of old titles, maybe something new. I wouldn't mind seeing Wolverine, for instance. That would be cool. Slightly unexpected, but awesome. Let's go! We're definitely getting some titles in this presentation, which is good.
Hi, I'm Mark Cerny. I'm excited to be here to talk about the newest addition to our console lineup, PlayStation 5 Pro, and how it advances gaming technology. But first, I want to take just a minute to look at what we put in the original PlayStation 5 and how it delivers an exceptional gaming experience. When PS5 debuted in 2020, it brought a lot to the table. 8 Zen 2 CPU cores form the brains of PlayStation 5 and enable high-speed complex gameplay, with character counts reaching into the hundreds and frame rates that can be as high as 120 frames a second. PS5 has a powerful RDNA 2 GPU, which can render anything from intricate details to fantastic worlds with vast panoramas to explore. Ray tracing allows for dramatic visual improvements, including reflections off of water or glass, and the realism that comes from real-time global illumination. A custom SSD can load data at breathtaking speed, resulting in ultra-fast transitions between game worlds and data streaming rates so high that traversal speeds are essentially unlimited. Tempest 3D audio tech brings an unparalleled sense of immersion to the sound of the games. With audio so real, you may not even need to see the enemies to know exactly where they are. Finally, the DualSense controller has haptics that let you feel through your hands what your character is experiencing inside of the game.
Right away.
It's wonderful to see such variety and richness of game experiences.
Awesome.
Creators have made amazing use of the hardware capabilities, but when I talk to them, I do hear about their desire for more graphics performance. The dreams of the developers are bigger than can be supported at 60 frames per second, and that leads to an aspect of modern gaming that we're all familiar with: graphics modes. It can be a difficult choice for players. Fidelity modes emphasize the visuals, typically through higher resolution rendering. These modes might also have enhanced detail or use more ray tracing. But the games only run at 30 frames per second. The visuals can be choppier and the controls less responsive. Performance modes emphasize frame rate and interactivity, typically choosing to run 60 frames per second, mainly by reducing the graphical detail until those frame rates can be achieved. When asked to decide on a mode, players are choosing performance about 3/4 of the time. Removing that decision, or at least narrowing that divide, is one of the key targets for PlayStation 5 Pro. We want to give players the graphics that the game creators aspire to, at the high frame rates that players typically prefer. To do that, PS5 Pro substantially improves over PlayStation 5 in 3 ways. Here's what we call the Big 3.
Oh boy.
First, we made the GPU much larger and increased the speed of the memory it uses. The result is rendering that's up to 45% faster. Second, we made major upgrades to the ray tracing, taking a streamlined and accelerated approach that allows calculation of the rays at double or even triple the speeds of PlayStation 5. And finally, we added custom hardware for machine learning and an AI library called PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, or PSSR for short. PSSR analyzes the game images pixel by pixel and can add an extraordinary amount of detail, which boosts the effective resolution of the games. Game creators are adding PS5 Pro support to new and existing titles, and with the Big 3 involved, the results can be pretty amazing, with graphics showing something like fidelity levels of detail but it doubled the frame rate. Here's The Last of Us Part 2 running on PS5 Pro. It has huge amounts of detail and targets a super smooth 60 frames per second. Let's compare this to the Fidelity mode on PS5, which is only running at 30 frames per second and is therefore much choppier.
Don't stop! We gotta lose.
This goal of delivering almost Fidelity-like graphics at performance frame rates has been achieved for a broad set of titles, including Marvel's Spider-Man 2 and Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. We can see that PS5 Pro is close to doubling the power of PlayStation 5. Another way to compare the two consoles is to look at PS5 Pro versus Performance mode on PS5, both of which target 60 frames per second. What we see here is a difference in detail. PS5 Pro is much sharper and crisper than PS5. For this, my favorite is the parade scene from Ratchet & Clank. Distant details are much clearer. And here we can see Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is noticeably higher resolution throughout the scene, including the trees and procedural cars. So overall, some remarkable improvement to the games. On PS5 Pro, we can see increased sharpness to the graphics or smoother and more responsive gameplay. This is the big three showing their value. As you've been seeing, machine learning via the PSSR library is being used quite broadly to add pixel detail and boost frame rate. But there are as many approaches as there are game engines. The increase in raw GPU power is being especially effective for Horizon Forbidden West. Apart from the detail boost, that extra graphics power is allowing for improvements to lighting and visual effects, as well as to the hair and the skin in cinematics.
Open up, guys. Jorv's orders.
Good enough for me.
Ray tracing is finding broad usage as well, particularly when the games are focused on higher frame rates. The faster hardware in PS5 Pro can make a real difference, allowing Gran Turismo 7 to add ray-traced reflections between the cars in gameplay, while continuing to support their targeted 60 frames per second. That boost in ray tracing is also delivering big wins for Hogwarts Legacy, allowing not only for better reflections and a greater variety of reflective surfaces, but also for further realism in the casting of shadows. I hope you've enjoyed this run-through of the technology behind PlayStation 5 Pro. Simply put, it's the most powerful console we've ever built, and a worthy addition to the PS5 family. Let me wrap this up by giving you a quick look at a number of games running on the new console.
You'll never break a legend, 'cause they don't know we are legendary.
Don't let me hang.
Spider-Man 2 is so good. I've enjoyed my PS5 quite a bit the last 4 years.
You're right. It'll be worth it.
Okay.
Did I do it? Oh, what is this? What's with all the neon?
Will this be a necessary upgrade for most existing PS5 users? Probably not. Depending on the price though, if you are, say, late in the generation, but 4 years into your gen, and you don't have a system yet, or at least not a PS5 yet, could be great to go ahead and get it. Like I said, depending on the price, it might as well. Slightly more future-proof. Alright, here we go. $700. November 7th. That's pretty expensive. 700 bucks. Wow. November 7th. Dang, so they did it. I mean, that was kind of expected, but still. That confirms it. November 7th. So, I said previously that depending on when the system was officially announced and when it was coming out, that probably that little time in between, we will see a small sales dip in the current PlayStation 5 ecosystem. Since we're getting this thing in 2 months, I think I stand by saying I wouldn't be surprised if September in the United States, Nintendo Switch overtakes PlayStation 5 in sales. And then possibly in October as well, because you're going to have some people that are holding out now. Some people it won't be unaffected, but the difference in Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 5 on the monthly in the United States isn't that great. So this could be another instance of what happened with the Nintendo Switch OLED model. Nintendo revealed the system and sales dipped just enough that next month or two that PlayStation 5 overtook it, and then Nintendo Switch OLED model came out in October, and once again sales went up now. You know what I mean? So something like that will probably happen here. Will it be enough of a difference maker for Nintendo Switch or Xbox Series for that matter, but more so on the Nintendo Switch side of practicality? Will it be enough of a difference to see that improvement in sales to give NS that #1 spot? We'll see. But you've got that gold Nintendo Switch Lite, you've got the Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom coming out, and then in October you also have Mario Party Jamboree. So you've got 2 big games and 1 more hardware iteration via new color coming out back to back. Of course, Mario and Luigi Brothers ship in November, but that's a November title. And in November, it's probably going to go back to PS5 because it is the newer system. It has the newer model. For all we know, Nintendo is going to reveal the Nintendo Switch 2 very soon. And that's another thing to take in consideration. Will that lower Nintendo Switch's sales? Maybe not as much because it's probably further out than the PS5 Pro, that is Nintendo Switch 2. And I could see Nintendo doing a price drop on the existing Nintendo Switch until or leading up to the Nintendo Switch 2. But, it's all a matter of perspective, how you looking at it. But it's exciting. This is part of why we analyze the way we do, try to figure things out, make safe predictions for the future. But in the meantime, let's go back from sales into the PlayStation 5 Pro. I think the system cosmetically looks cool. It's the same PS5 or the PS5 Slim kind of looking model that we've had for a little while now, just with that black, diagonal strip down the middle-ish. Vertical sand sold separately. It's kind of funny, but that's been a thing for a while. Like I said, I'm quite happy with my PS5. I have 4K LG 65-inch OLED TE, specifically the LG CX10, and I love it. It's a beautiful TV. 65 inches is good size. The screen quality is nice. It outputs at 4K, 120 hertz. It's got the HDMI 2.1, 4 slots on the back, so no complaints on the TV. And honestly, it's been perfect to play Nintendo Switch, Xbox Series X, and PlayStation 5 on for these last several years. And whether I'm playing in fidelity mode or performance mode on games that have the 2 options, I really can't complain either way. So many of the games are optimized so well that oftentimes the 30 frames per second mode with the better graphics runs just fine. Like most of the games are not dropping and clipping and being all jittery in and out. If it's a smooth 30, it's a fine 30. And seeing that more crisp visual is nice. On the other hand, there are times where you may notice slightly that improved frame rate of 60 frames per second and only notice a tiny visual drop if you get closer up to the TV and you're looking between. Like I remember doing this test with Guardians of the Galaxy specifically on PS5. That's the version that I purchased it for. And it wasn't super easy to see the difference. Flipping back and forth, you could tell, particularly going closer and closer to the TV, okay, slightly less clear, slightly more jaggies. okay, that walking animation just ever so better or worse depending on it. But for the most part, I ended up playing that game in fidelity mode, and actually, that is the mode that I tend to favor because since most of these games that are running at 30 aren't dropping rates, I'm fine with a smooth, consistent 30 and looking for that slightly better visuals. More so than slightly worse, because they're not even bad visuals though, just slightly less good. Saying worse is sort of a weird thing, but just not quite as awesome and a little bit more smooth. I mean, you could say that, well, yeah, 60 is double, but you're not necessarily feeling the impact of double, at least not me. Mm. So I probably won't be getting this. Will I get the next generation, console from PlayStation, the PlayStation 6 eventually? Yes. Will I get, you know, the next Xbox console? Most likely. I say most likely instead of a definitive yes because I have every Xbox console, from the original to 360 to 1 to X. However, depending on how Microsoft moves forward, if a majority of their games end up being on Nintendo Switch 2 and PlayStation 6 and stuff like that, then there's less and less incentive to just buy that machine. Like you tell me I don't need an Xbox to get Perfect Dark anymore. I already have it and I'm going to get Perfect Dark on Xbox Series X, but if you don't need it, if they're not going to have exclusives, or even if they have exclusives that are time sensitive and then, you know, that next Gears of War, that next Halo, that next Conquer, that next Banjo comes out to PlayStation and Nintendo systems 6 months later or 1 year later. We're not really starving for games in the video game industry right now. We have so many games, so many developers, so many indie titles, talented studios coming out left and right that, yeah, just imagine that the release date of what would be an Xbox exclusive that's now multi-platform, just imagine that release date is 6 months later, 1 year later, and be okay with it. It's a little bit more difficult than that when it comes to reality and like, you just see this game and see it being played and don't want to have spoilers and, tell yourself I gotta wait 6 more months, but there's so much else to play. So we'll see. That's where I'm standing with Xbox, but PlayStation has enough IP. You can make the argument though that even PlayStation is starting to go. Has been going more and more PC. Uh, Once again, shortly after, sometimes several months, sometimes a couple of years after a game comes out on PS4 or PS5. But I am more of a home console, sit on the couch kind of gamer than sit in front of my, PC screen gamer. Or in the case of Nintendo Switch, I play quite a bit on the couch and then portably, also on the couch or in bed or elsewhere, with the system as it has that dual functionality. Or actually, triple the functionality because that tabletop mode is pretty awesome. It is a good mode as well. But it's cool. Let me know. Are you gonna get the PS5 Pro? Do you have a PS5 already? Are you gonna skip out on it? What you feeling? And also, are you excited? Somewhat related. We're talking video games, right? Unless if you are someone that only plays on this, only plays on this, only plays on this, you're probably interested in all of what gaming has, and even if you have a favorite, hopefully, probably, maybe, you realize that competition is good because it makes your favorite company better, strive to be better. So someone else having something that's good only makes your own company's, your own favorite company's product better, right? And then maybe you're also just enjoying what others have in store as well. But that slightly related / unrelated question is, are you excited for Nintendo Switch 2? Because it is looking more and more likely that September or early October is going to be when Nintendo reveals their next generation console. Like, I am absolutely getting that. I will never not get the next Nintendo platform. There are just way too many IPs from way too many years and multiple decades at this point of fandom, of love that I have for classic Mario and Zelda and Metroid and Donkey Kong and Kirby and, in more recent memory, Splatoon and titles that haven't been used in a while, like Punch-Out and the hope for Star Fox and Fire Emblem and Xenoblade Chronicles. You know what I mean? Like, there's just so much. Nintendo is so diverse that I can't wait to see what's next there. And, probably, and this isn't a diss on the PlayStation 5 Pro, it is known that it is an upgraded version, right? It is not a brand new designated next generation machine, whereas Nintendo's is going to be. But when we see that Nintendo Switch 2 reveal, the graphical difference is going to be far greater. It's coming 8 years after the old system. And this is 4 years after the same system, right? So 8 years, more tech will have passed than 4 years. A whole next generation is a bigger leap than a midway jump. But this also brings up an interesting conversation to think about. When do we think the PlayStation 6 will come out, PlayStation 4 came out in 2013, and 3 years later is when PlayStation 4 Pro came out in 2016, and 4 years after that was the PS5. This time around, the PS5 was 2020. 4 years later, so it lasted 1 year longer before it got a mid-gen refresh, is coming out the PS5 Pro. So a whopping 4 more years would be an 8-year long generation for Sony. I think that's a little bit too long. I wouldn't mind it. Like, honestly, let's get some good games on it before just doing a whole other system and stuff. But if you wanted to be a little bit safer, I guess you could say 3 years till till the PlayStation 6 comes out. So that's looking at a November 2027 release date. I don't think any later than November 2028, but time will tell. And when is Xbox next gonna come out? Because it looks like Microsoft isn't going to be doing a mid-generation refresh right now. A different model of the Xbox Series X, a circular model, a different extra slim one, a different S, like all of those are possibilities, but I think Microsoft is gonna double down and take their time, and maybe their target window, like if Sony is thinking 3 or 4 years until PlayStation 6 comes out, I could see Microsoft maybe doing 2 or 3 years. So maybe November 2026 is when the next Xbox is coming out, you know what I mean? And no later than 27. Because PlayStation is a stronger brand. It is a more successful console this time around, and it has been for a while since, the end of that Xbox 360 PS3 battle. PS4 fared much better than Xbox One did, and PS5 is faring better than Xbox Series is. So I think Microsoft needs to get out sooner, kind of like they did with Xbox 360, making a bigger impact, taking that year advantage over PlayStation 3 and Wii. And actually, Xbox 360 ended up outselling PS3 for the vast majority of that generation until like the very end. PS3 edged out Xbox 360 and sold a couple million more. Now we ended up winning the generation regardless, selling 101.63 million, which was a good like 14 million more than the other two. But regardless, Microsoft could benefit, I think, from being out a year early. If it's out 2 years early, like let's say Microsoft, comes out with the Xbox next November 2025, I think that would be 2 to 3 years before PS6. You could say, well, yeah, it's benefiting from 2 to 3 years worth of more sales, but that level of graphical power difference in releasing technology 2 to 3 years ahead of time might be too great. Maybe not, though. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. But like I said, the whole next thing is, what is Microsoft going to do with their games? I think the long-term strategy for Xbox should be, in the meantime, since you're a little bit struggling, get your IP on as many platforms as you can, because you're going to establish the IP and the fever and the growth and the love and the passion and the commitment that everybody needs to play Minecraft, Call of Duty, Banjo-Kazooie, Halo. Kind of stinks in the meantime, but hear me out. Everybody loves it. Everybody loves it. You build up passion and dedication over 10 to 15 years, and then eventually, a couple systems down, it's like from now on, everything is exclusive. Ooh, that's a gamble though. But could you imagine Minecraft now only being on Xbox? That takes away a lot of software sales by being on everything, but it makes everybody have to buy now your Xbox machine to play that eventual next down the line version of Minecraft. And you do that with Halo and Gears of War and Call of Duty and Forza. Some of these were always Xbox anyways. But now that Microsoft has acquired so much more, like Doom, like Wolfenstein, things that have succeeded on other platforms, build them up even more on other platforms, and then shrink it back down into Xbox only. That might be, it's a little bit of a risky strategy because you're never going to sell as many software units. You know what I mean? Like, could you imagine taking Minecraft off of Nintendo? Minecraft is one of the best third-party selling games this generation in Japan, and all of those sales come from Nintendo Switch. So take that away? That sounds crazy. That doesn't work. But it makes people need to buy Xbox in order to play it. But it's a lot of thinking behind the scenes, because the reality is, well, is the Japanese audience ever going to buy Xbox even remotely close in numbers as they would buy a Nintendo Switch or a Nintendo Switch successor? Absolutely not. You know what I mean? So the difference is too dramatic. But in a successful market where Microsoft has had, previous comparable success to Nintendo and Sony, like United States, for instance, you know, uh, cutting yourself short is going to be a part of this in not being on as many platforms. But if you get the Xbox brand and the user base to be high enough in comparison, then you are, getting less software sales, but selling more hardware, which then makes those people a part of the system user base that buy more of their third-party favorite games on that system, more of Microsoft's own first-party games on that system, and so forth. But then another thing is like I said, as soon as you bring up one layer, there's another layer, and that's Game Pass. Game Pass getting more and more expensive, fine, but it's still at the end of the day a really high-quality rental service where you don't own the games, but being a part of that Xbox Game Pass Ultimate service allows you to then purchase games for a cheaper amount. You know what I mean? You get a little bit of a sales discount, so that does help. But at the end of the day, it does allow you the most amount of play for the least amount of cost. So if you're just interested in playing, and that might be Microsoft's bet on the future, is that looking at the Netflix model and Disney Plus and Max and all this, streaming stuff, maybe fewer and fewer people have that desire, that need to hold something tangible, to go to their brick and mortar store and buy it, or even to own it permanently digitally. But they give them the option to buy it cheaper by being a part of Game Pass. However, the one thing is, you may have an install base that no longer has the demand, or I should say, no longer has the desire or the equating ability that this game is worth 70. This game a la carte to buy it individually is worth 60. All of these individual games are worth 60 and 70 a pop. Because what if Microsoft eventually switches gears a little bit and doesn't make every game available on Game Pass from all of their internal studios? Or they do so by raising the price even more in order to get that. Do people that have been used to paying so much less to play games now have the need, the desire? Can they equate still that these games worth individually, bam, will cost a whopping 70, when it used to be hang on, 280 for the whole year. You know what I mean? Whereas Nintendo, every gamer, except for a small vocal minority, say that yeah, $70 absolutely worth it for the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Or most gamers not complaining about $60 being the cost for the vast majority of Nintendo first party produced, published, developed games. Uh, and Sony, to an extent, also. Yeah, they have their PlayStation service, but their games still sell quite well on their own. But Sony has seen we kind of have to make up some slack in sales because some of their games cost so much, a couple $100 million, that they have to go to PC. Nintendo seems like they had the most successful outlook in the future. They have their AAA budgets. They have plenty of AA, single A, budgets. Not every game costs 200 million. In fact, very few are breaking that 100 million threshold, with a lot of them costing, 30 to 40 million, and then some 5 to 20 million costing titles, approximately. For every The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild with several years of development time, you have something a little bit smaller or a lot smaller like Princess Peach Showtime, and you've got Kirby and the Forgotten Land over here, and then you have Game Freak and the Pokemon Company doing what they do over here. So Nintendo really has a lot and such a deep history that they have a little bit of an easier time porting classic titles. At least if they want to, they certainly can, because they have so much to choose from. You know, this isn't necessarily a fight argument. This is just an overall kind of picture and taking several of my thoughts at once on the video game industry and putting them into one 30-minute video, 20 minutes longer than the PlayStation presentation itself. But it was fun talking. I hope you had fun listening. Let me know what you thought of the PS5 Pro and any of the other stuff that I talked about. Thanks for watching with me. This is PGN signing out. See you next time.